Jesus, boys, girls in between us, how you doing? It is Red Gamut here, and we are here for the post E3 podcast. It's been a week, 2 weeks now since, whatever. It's been a week and a half, something like that, since E3, and it's gone back to being no news about anything, which is great. And because of that, I have brought along Mr. Nairman. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm fine and dandy like sour candy. And to liven things up and provide us with a different viewpoint, we've done something different this week. We've brought along my buddy Mr. Malimber, who you may remember from some of my World of Warcraft videos that nobody watched. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm not too bad for a morning.
Excellent. So yes, Mr. Malimber is a friend of mine who's been holding that unfortunate title for many, many years, and he's here to provide us with, as I said, something of a different viewpoint on gaming, since he's more primarily a PC gamer and follows things from that perspective. So, that being the case, we're going to move along to our first topic of the week, and the first topic of the week is about Destiny, which is not the, just undeterminable line of fate which leads you through life by your own nose, but not knowing where you're going, but the actual game that's on consoles, which is delivered by Bungie and Activision, and is primarily designed to just squeeze every single nickel and dime out of your wallet that has ever been living there. So what happened this week was actually a couple of things that happened in the last week, was that first of all, Bungie announced that they are sticking to their price point of US, I think is it US $40 for the DLC, is that the case, Nairman?
I don't know what the price is off the top of my head, but it's somewhere around $40 to $50, which everyone's kind of upset about.
Yeah, $40 to $50 for their new Taken King DLC, which they announced at E3, and it's going to be coming out in September for the PS3 and for the Xbox version. Now, this is causing a lot of controversy amongst Destiny players, amongst people just, with living, breathing hearts and minds in general, because it's $40 to $50 fucking dollars for DLC. Now, this is coming from Activision, who are the publishers. Does this surprise you in the slightest bit at all, Limber?
Well, you know my opinion on Activision, but no, not really. It's pretty much a standard they've set for a while.
Well, I know your opinion on Activision, but the people out there don't know what it is, so please, for their elucidation, explain how you feel about Activision in general.
Well, look, at the end of the day, pretty much Activision's been headed along this line for ages anyway. I don't know why anybody is particularly surprised. All they're trying to do at this point in time is push the market as far as they go. Yes, they had to back down, but they'll do it again.
Well, they haven't really backed down from this. They backed down in different ways, which we'll get into in a moment. But what is kind of interesting to me about this is the fact that it's not part of the season pass. So, for people like me who are idiots and bought Destiny purely on Bungie's name alone and their credibility and their lineage from the past in terms of Halo games and whatnot, we got a whole bunch of DLC, which was part of the season pass, and a lot of it, I haven't actually played any of it. I actually gave up Destiny pretty shortly after it came out. I didn't like the loot system. I got, the Cryptarch, they've admitted that, the Cryptarch, quote unquote, sometimes revealing purple engrams to be blue items was a mistake. That's a load of shit. Every single purple engram I ever turned into the fucking Cryptarch turned into a freaking blue. So that was not just sometimes. But I gave it up. Shortly after the whole loot cave fiasco, I kind of just abandoned that, and I went back to it actually earlier this week just to try and see what the new DLC was like and whatnot. And then I found out that they're going to be releasing this Taken King DLC. It's not going to be part of the season pass, and it's going to cost a shit ton of money. And now this is like $40, $50. I mean, for Americans, that's like 2/3 of the price of the game, and for us, that's going to be $40, $50. US is going to be about 60 to 70 at least Australian. So, again, 2/3 of the price. What are your thoughts on this, Dan, man? How do you feel about the fact that we are now entering what is potentially a new phase? Because this is also something similar that's happening for Arkham Knight that I noticed as well. Their DLC is around, their season pass rather, is around this price point, which we'll get into Arkham Knight shortly. But how do you, is this like a new era for DLC where we're just moving into oh yeah, we're going to have now season passes, which are going to cost just as much as the original game itself?
I certainly hope not, because I don't want to pay that much for what is basically just cheap additional content for basically not even what will probably be half a game. Now, there are kind of extensions where things can kind of get that way. I don't mind the idea of a season pass for getting all the DLC for that kind of price, considering all the DLC individually may cost more, so I don't mind the idea of a season pass being that much, but individual DLC, yeah, that's way too much for what's essentially going to be a few missions, I imagine.
Yeah, very much so. That's a valid point. That's a good distinction between Season Pass and what actually is a new DLC. Now, Bungie have gone out and said, like, no, this is going to be a huge expansion. It's going to be gigantic. It's going to have, like, it's going to be fully story-driven. It's going to be fully voiced. I mean, when did fully voiced start becoming a sales point? I thought we finished that around 1996. It's going to have all this new content. It's going to have different guns, all that kind of crap. Yeah, and I like, if it was coming from another company, I would kind of be a little bit more on board with that if they're saying it's all like, this huge immersive experience. But like, going back and looking at what happened with Destiny and the fact that like it was a game that had no plot whatsoever, like it can be summed up in, you are a person who was brought back from the dead by Peter Dinklage to fight the darkness on behalf of a big giant space ball, golf ball thing. That's it. That's the plot of Destiny. That's all you find out. You are fighting the darkness. And there's just no plot to it. So for them to like turn around and say like we're making this huge, expansive, epic story, I mean, their words have no weight to it. I mean, what are you thinking, Malimber? Have you seen this? Have you read this? What's your thoughts?
Look, at the end of the day, if you look at it, yeah, you're right, there is no story to Destiny, but there never had to be. It was literally just an RPG shooter, so, it was Call of Duty with an RPG feel to it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not particularly surprising, and yeah, they're going to charge $40 to $50 for DLC because they can get away with it with other games. So, once again, I always bring it back to the point of they will push the market as far as it goes. Yep, they got a bit of rage this time because, I mean, you're right, $40 to $50 for a DLC, that's ridiculous. But people will pay it. So if people keep paying it, they will keep doing it.
Yeah, valid point. But okay, let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Let's look at World of Warcraft, which is obviously a game that you have played up until very recently. And we look at the new Worlds of Draenor expansion that came out for that. That's $40 to $50 for an expansion. That's a huge multiplayer experience. That's fully voice acted, giant expansive area, that kind of thing. Do you feel that there is a valid comparison there, or do you feel like Destiny is still pushing the envelope too far?
Yeah, not even close. If you have a look at the amount of content, I mean, everyone's complaining at the moment in WoW about the Apexis grind, and I understand that. It's part of the reason why I kind of went, I'm just going to kind of sit in my garrison and do nothing because there's really nothing to do. So, I mean...
Everyone's out of grinding Apexis shards and here I am just sitting in my garrison.
Yeah, pretty much. But, look, I mean, if you were to look at the content that would be available by comparison to something like WoW, which literally has, maybe 10 to 15 to 20 hours, I think. It didn't take me long to hit top level, but it did take me a while to actually get anything decent. So, I mean, looking 20 to 30 hours, and I can understand, $40 to $50 for 20 to 30 hours, not too bad. Given Activision's track record with Destiny, however, I would think it would be highly unlikely that you would get 20 to 30 hours actual content, and you'd probably get more along the lines of the equivalent of 20 to 30 hours of WoW Apexis grind.
Well, the interesting point to remember is that both Bungie and Blizzard are both owned by Activision. But I think also the important distinction there as well is that with Destiny, every new raid and DLC that comes out is something that you actually need to pay for, whereas with previous WoW expansions, yes, you pay for the expansion, but you also get a steady stream of new raids and new content that comes out free after that. And that's something which is obviously not a model that they're going with Destiny at the moment.
Honestly, I think it was their attempt to carve up things like raids and stuff like that and see if they could monetize it. Because you're right, in WoW, when people get an expansion and raids and stuff like that, they expect it for free. This was the ability for them to target a new market, like a first-person shooter market, that probably, especially on console, may not have been familiar with how RPGs would normally work. And they thought, hey, fresh market, let's see what we can get away with. So let's carve up the raids and make them pay for them. Let's charge $40 for DLC, which may not be huge because these people aren't traditionally familiar, like PC gamers are, especially WoW players and online MMO players, with the expectation of, hey, if I'm getting this DLC, if I'm getting this expansion, I'm expecting not only content, but the expansion of that content for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, valid point. What do you think, yeah, man, do you think this is just Activision was really trying to push the market to see how much it will actually bear?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it seemed early on that from what I could tell of Destiny that this was going to be kind of their MMO testing waters for certain things, at least on consoles. So it was just really going to be how much more can we monetize extra content, how much more can we monetize little things that we probably shouldn't be trying to monetize for. Basically, they're kind of saying, okay, you paid for the game, now pay for everything else that's going to come afterwards, rather than doing an MMO route of having an expansion and then all the updates coming for free because you already paid for the expansion. Which I wouldn't mind paying an expansion for Destiny if there was a whole bunch of stuff coming out later that was free, so essentially making it a season pass in a sense. But yeah, this is just kind of a lot for what was probably going to be 1 or 2 missions and a lot of grinding, because that's what Destiny pretty much is at this point, just grinding.
Yeah, it is. It's grind so hard that even World of Warcraft looks at it and says that it should really tone it down a bit.
Yeah, definitely. So we just have a lot of, probably just a lot of, hey, go do this mission a whole bunch of times to try and hope and get for a good loot, which you probably already have tons of at this point if you're still playing Destiny.
Yeah. Now, another interesting thing that did happen with Destiny is that they announced that they are partnering with Red Bull, and if you slam down a can of Red Bull energy drink, you will be entitled to take part in a exclusive mission, or I forget if it was a mission or a raid or a strike or something. It's exclusive content purely for people who buy Red Bull. And again, like this again goes back to like just trying to see how much the market will bear. I mean, is this not getting just a little bit silly now?
Oh, definitely. It's just, why do we need paid product advertising in a sci-fi future fantasy game? It'd be like all over Shepard's suit, you had, Mountain Dew and Gatorade and Doritos and all those other labels slapped on his armor.
Because if you read the statement from Red Bull, it's the kind of hyperbole that goes along the lines of the Destiny reflects the kind of brand image that we seek of having fast-paced action and energy and exciting environment of all kinds of horseshit. I don't know. That's what they're saying. It's bullshit. Malimber, thoughts?
Go and play COD if you want exciting, pulse-pounding action. Stay out of our MMOs, thanks.
Fair enough. We can keep going about Destiny for a while. There are some other sub comments that were made about the collector's edition and whatnot, but we've probably gone on about that quite enough. I think you guys get the impression of what we are thinking about that game at the moment. I was trying to get back into it. I did some strikes earlier in the week. I just did some wandering around. I had a free purple engram in my mail for no particular reason. But as soon as I found out about the Taken King DLC, I immediately just swore off it again, and I'm actually planning to delete it from my hard drive of my Xbox to make some space. So that's kind of what I feel about their pricing structure. So moving on from that, this is probably going to be a little bit of a shorter topic. It's just something that's probably more interesting to Nearman and myself, so we'll probably be leaving Mal out of this conversation a little bit. But Splatoon actually shifted 1 million units this week, which is not a gigantic amount, but it's also not nothing either. It's 1 million freaking units. What do you think about this, Nearman? Do you think that this is a good number for Nintendo, or do you think they're going to be aiming for higher than this, or what are your thoughts on that?
It's hard to say with Nintendo, considering they never really released their expectations for games, unlike Square, where they kind of said Tomb Raider was a disappointment, even though it really wasn't sales-wise. But 1 million units is nothing to sneeze at. So it's a lot of units. It's definitely doing well. Word of mouth is definitely carrying the game compared to other Nintendo franchises where they could just slap the game out there and boom, it's going to sell. So this definitely had some marketing to it. This definitely had some word of mouth to it. So it's nothing to sneeze at. I'm sure Nintendo's very pleased with over 1 million units for a new IP where I don't think they had much faith on it until last E3 when they finally showed it off. So it's a good sign that it's doing well, and hopefully that Nintendo is pleased with it as well.
Yeah, well, I mean that's kind of the question, because whether it actually is doing well or not, because 1 million units, as I said, is a lot. That's 1 million freaking units. But when you look at what publishers like that aren't Nintendo expect from their games, I mean, I know that you look at a game that was a failure like Street Fighter Cross Tekken, they're looking at around 4 million units for that. That was their expectation. It only sold about 2. As you said, Tomb Raider was considered a disappointment by Square Enix. That sold over 6. So when you put it in comparison to that, 1 million units, I mean, still early days, obviously, but not as much as what those games kind of sell. On the other hand, it probably wasn't a terribly expensive game to produce, considering that there's only a very limited number of levels and weapons and just things to do in the game at the moment.
Yeah, everyone kind of has their own expectations for games, so it's hard to tell what Nintendo's expectations are, but again, I'm kind of basing this on their history with new IPs and other smaller IPs that they don't necessarily put that much effort into. So I think 1 million units is a good starting point, at least considering it's been out for about a month now. It'll probably do better once, it gets bundled. Maybe there'll be a bundle with the Wii U this holiday season. Maybe it'll do better this holiday season after the summer drought and so on and so forth. So it's just hard to tell.
Sorry, can I just interject for a second?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
I actually find that it's very interesting after watching Splatoon and that sort of thing. It is the first game that's actually made me want to touch a console. I don't even have a Wii U. If they were to bundle Splatoon with a Wii U, I would actually seriously consider it. And I am, as Red Gambit knows, a very PC Master Race person. But I've actually found it moderately interesting for a Nintendo game, because Nintendo games are definitely not my thing. But for them to really go in this direction, you're right, it's still early days. I reckon they will pick up around that Christmas time, because it's the sort of game where even someone like me who really doesn't care at all about consoles could actually get into it, because it looks fun and interesting for a change.
That's interesting to me. Sorry, just to continue on the tangents for a moment. We'll get back to you in a second there, man. That is interesting to me, because you are a person who, people obviously don't know this about Malimber, but Malimber used to be a guy who was very much into console games. We spent many completely platonic nights together playing games like Mario Kart and Street Fighter on a Super Nintendo, and then Halo on the Xbox and things like that. But you, in the last few years, very much tapered away from that kind of thing and stuck to playing very PC games, especially games that were just like things like Minecraft and things like Space Engineers, and games that were very non-violent and very just creatively oriented. So is it the fact that Splatoon is a game which, even though it is a competitive shooter, it is like very colorful and interesting and has like that kind of creative kind of element of the fact that you're just covering everything with ink that you actually find appealing?
It's actually, like, after watching a lot of it, it's actually that plus the mechanics. The mechanics are actually moderately interesting. It's not like you're just walking around a level going bam, 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 yep, done. There's a lot to the game. For such a simple game, there's actually a lot of depth in there. And a lot of fun to be had with it. And yeah, okay, I'm attracted to bright colours sometimes. It's just call me a cat, but it's basically, it's the first game that hasn't been this kind of gritty, realistic, war as hell style thing. It's just a fun game to watch, and it looks like a fun game to play. And yeah, it's actually something that's piqued my interest again in consoles. And for it to do that, I mean, it's got to be a fairly decent game to start with, because, people like me just don't care about consoles. So, I would be interested to see if they did bundle it, because it would be a great idea. And I reckon it would ship more Wii U's. But, Nintendo has a habit of, doing stupid stuff. So, it's entirely possible that they won't do that, and it probably may fall flat.
Well, there you go, there, man. Splatoon is actually converting PC players. Fun facts.
Yeah, that's pretty funny, but I think that's kind of what Nintendo was going for with Splatoon, as a kind of an alternative to all the realistic, gritty war as hell shooters out there, to try and entice some people who may be interested in the gameplay in a sense, but not necessarily the tone, to come over to their side and pick up a game like Splatoon. So I can definitely see that actually happening at some point, in terms of maybe bundling with it, maybe not, but it's something I can definitely see happening, at least.
Well, that is like kind of the current running joke at the moment, that like you take those Call of Duty games and whatnot, and like that's a game which is designed for adults and played by 6-year-olds, whereas Splatoon is a game designed for 6-year-olds and mostly played by adults.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a funny ongoing online joke, but it's definitely one that rings true a lot of the time. So I definitely know more people my age playing Splatoon than they are Call of Duty at this point.
It's very My Little Pony-ish a bit there, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, though. I mean, I don't play competitive shooters either. I stopped playing competitive shooters around, like, Halo 3 kind of territory. Just because I got sick of, like, that, of running into assholes. I got sick of running into people who would teabag you and talk shit over the microphones and crap like that. And I'm just like, I don't need this. I'm just going to go play Street Fighter, you know? And so to be able to go back and play a game which is just, like, a competitive shooter, which is just purely based... And I hate to like really play into their hands like this because you know Nintendo is fun, Nintendo is family, you know. But it is, and that's what I actually find attractive about it. And that's what's got you know. I bought the game purely based on that. And I've just like had fun playing it by myself or playing it with Dre. So yeah, it is kind of crazy that like you know they spout that kind of crap, but in this particular instance, it seems to have really worked.
They're targeting the casual gamer again. I mean, this is what they did with the Wii. This is what they hoped would happen with the Wii U. But they're back to that casual gamer who doesn't really pick up a console a lot, but all of a sudden sees a game like Splatoon and goes, hey, that actually looks pretty interesting. You know, let's go and play that. And yeah, you might get those casual gamers who will play it for like, you know, 10, 15, 20 hours, wait for a friend to come over. But that's a unit that you would have normally not sold because people like me would kind of sit there and go, well, meh, it's just another shooter.
Yeah, fair enough. Sorry, go on, Neyman?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, unlike other Wii games, though, this one actually does have some depth to it. This isn't just kind of a waggle fest. This at least has some actual strategic depth. It has some gameplay depth that the hardcore players can actually get into as well, which I think was the balance they were missing so hard during the Wii days.
Yeah, and that's very true. I mean, the Wii was, you know, famous for completely abandoning the hardcore crowd in favor of the casual crowd, whereas this game seems to have struck a nice balance between the two. So yeah, that's really cool. That's very interesting. We should probably move on from that because we still do have two more topics to discuss, and we will be coming back to Nintendo on that a little bit later. But we are going to move on to the shitstorm, which is on everyone's lips. Don't take that literally. And that is the Arkham City Arkham Knight. I keep calling it Arkham City. Arkham Knight PC port. Because obviously people who have bought the game on consoles have had a fantastic time. It runs very well. It doesn't run at 60 FPS, but I'm not a frame rate whore, so I don't really care. Runs really well. Great game. Fantastic. Loving the crap out of it right now. Not so much for PC gamers. I know that Malimber has a lot to say about this, but I will start with Nairman. Any thoughts specifically about that you want to talk about?
Mostly that it's a massive disappointment considering people build games on PC, so it's kind of surprising that the PC version is usually the one that doesn't seem to work right coming out. But, you know, it's just surprising that it's just so bad. I can understand people having some problems with the PC version because maybe their PC's not optimized for this particular game, or they don't just have the right drivers installed and so on. But for it to be this bad is just kind of alarming when the PS4 and Xbox One versions run, as far as I can tell, pretty much perfectly smooth.
Yeah, and like, what's interesting to this about this for me is that normally when there's a port which is just flat out broken, it's because they've given it to a third-party company who has no experience porting, and that's certainly been the case in the past with a lot of games. But you know, and this also continues a long legacy of games being, you know, just flat out broken for the PC. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about Dead or Alive 5 just shipping completely incomplete PC, like lacking the on-load mode, all that kind of thing. But with this game in particular, it was given to Iron Galaxy, who are not a studio completely unfamiliar with ports. They've done ports for Street Fighter 3 onto Xbox and PS3, and that was a game which was considered to be largely arcade perfect. Now, this is obviously console and not PC, so you know, I don't know, but yeah, we don't know exactly where the blame rests. But this is obviously, you know, Malimber, you are the PC gamer out of the three of us. So I'm sure you've got plenty of thoughts on this. Why don't you tell us about those?
Probably way too many thoughts about this. Look, I mean, they had to know. For it not to work on so many machines, including, you know, we're talking right up to Total Biscuit's $6,000, you know, PCs with Titans and all sorts of stuff. They had to know. I almost guarantee you that, especially the porting company, they would have been shitting themselves as with the release of the Steam refund policy. I guarantee you, coming up to it, the months coming up, they would have gone, oh yeah, there's some issues, but you know what, we'll patch them out. What can they do about it? You know, they've already bought the product, and then Steam drops the refund policy, and they probably just kind of went, oh shit, crap. Okay, pull the game, pull it now, because if you look at companies, especially like people like Warner Brothers and that sort of thing, they normally don't, you know, it's very trope to say, but they don't care about the PC market. You know, they're targeting the easy console market because it's easier to produce for, it's easier, you know, they know the hardware, that sort of thing. So they're not too concerned with the PC market. It's money for them, but probably not as much as a console port or a console game would be. These companies don't move fast. So for them to come out and offer and pull it from Steam and point towards the refunds for Steam, they had to know. I mean, yes, everyone's going, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, but come on. If your game is so bad that it literally does not run on the lowest to the highest computer, you either did no QA and you deserve everything you got, or you knew about it and you hoped that PC users would get stuck with it because originally Steam had no, you know, refund policy. For it to drop a few weeks before Arkham Knight and for them to react as fast as they did, they probably knew it was coming.
Alright, well let's indulge the conspiracy theory for just a moment, because I have my own theory about this, and it's not too far from what you're saying. Now, I didn't follow Arkham Knight's development cycle too closely, because these days I actually like to try and avoid games that I'm actually really interested in, because I want to be as surprised as possible when I play them. So I did very little research going into playing Arkham Knight, but obviously there was the known fact the game got pushed back from release. It was slated to come out early this year. I think it's somewhere around January, February kind of territory, and it got pushed back to June 24. So with that in mind, obviously, like, that time was being used to polish the game. It wasn't finished when the start of the year rolled around. So it came around. So they said, okay, let's give it 3-4 months more to polish this game, get it ready, and get it out properly. Now, that's already one delay, and obviously, it's bad enough to have a delay on a game's release. To delay it again is obviously even worse. So I kind of wonder personally if it got to the point where basically they got to the deadline for publishing the game, and basically they knew that it wasn't finished. They knew that it was still bugging on PC, but they just went, okay, we can either bear the cost of delaying this game again, which will cost X however many $1 million will cost to delay the game again, or we can publish it now, send the final code off, and in the time between now and then we'll work on a day one patch or a week one patch or something like that. That's kind of my thought on what they may have been intending before it turned into the absolute shitstorm that it did. They probably didn't expect it to be as bad as it was, and as you said, the inclusion of the Steam refund policy was obviously something that they couldn't have seen coming until it actually happened and would have a big impact on that decision. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Do you have any thoughts that differ from that? Do you have your own tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, Nearman?
Not particularly. I feel this is just kind of what you said. This was a hope that they could get a patch out pretty much as soon as they could, and hoping that it wouldn't blow up as it did, when really it was just so broken that it kind of was inevitable that it was going to blow up like this. So I think it's more just Warner being stupid than it is kind of them being evil in this instance, more than anything else, considering the game runs just fine on the console version. So I think this is just them being stupid more than anything.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I mean, yes, absolutely. Choosing to release a game that's not is not finished is definitely a case of stupidity. But Warner Bros. Has taken the unprecedented decision of pulling the game from sale completely. Now, whether that is actually, we can be cynical and say that. Well, actually, it's not even cynical. It's just prudent saying that they're probably doing that to avoid being refunded. But whether it's something, whether they generally don't care, or whether it's just something that because it did blow up way worse than they expected, we don't know. Looking at some of the tweets coming out from Rocksteady today, they're saying that they did definitely support the PC version, and they also completely supported the decision to suspend the PC version as well. It wasn't just completely Warner Bros. Decision, and they're also currently working the entire basic Rocksteady staff is now working completely with Iron Galaxy and Warner Brothers games try and get this fixed as fast as humanly possible, which is what you kind of expect.
Yeah, definitely. It just screams a kind of a slow reaction on their part from realizing that it's a bad port.
It's quite interesting. I mean, I'm looking at the Arkham Knight's Steam page now, and if you have a look, like literally you've got 11,307 reviews, and they're mostly negative. I don't know. I mean, they have changed it now to being available in the fall of 2015, but honestly, at this point in time, I think they've done their dash. I don't think you'll get... I mean, they may re-release this, and they may fix it, and they may do everything that they need to do, but I think they killed the game at this point. And, you know, Naman's right. It was a very stupid decision on Warner Brothers' part to think that they would get away with it. And you're right, it's probably not something that was intentionally evil. It's like, hey, we've got a broken game. We hate PC gamers. But, I mean, you've got to look at the decision to release such a broken game. And they've done... I mean, if this was the first time and everyone's kind of like, oh, no, you know... But look at their previous games. I mean, they've released previous Batman games on PC that, to this day, have still not been fixed. So, I mean, this isn't like a, wow, this is totally out of the normal. This is business as usual, and they just didn't expect it to blow up as big as it did.
Yeah, fair enough. And as you said, the game's going to be pushed back to fall, which is around September, in case you weren't aware for us Australian people. So that's a long ways off. So I kind of wonder, like, you know, we say, okay, they should delay the game, but if they delay the game, that's kind of like, you know, a little bit of a Sophie's choice, because if they delay it for PC, they either delay it exclusively for PC and then incur the wrath of all the PC gamers saying, why is it being released for console first? Or they, you know, delay it for everyone and then they make no money.
I think the best point for that was, what was it? They would either prefer all the money or none of the money.
Yeah, I think that's what it basically comes down to. So yeah, I mean, we can, obviously the game is broken as fuck. Everyone, you know, there's plenty of videos out there. TB, as you said, has videos on there. Angry Joe has videos on there. I'm sure there's plenty of other videos on the interwebs about that kind of thing. Any final thoughts on that one there, man, from your perspective?
Not particularly. It's just kind of confusing how one version became so bad versus the other two working so really quite well, actually. I'm kind of surprised at how well it's running, considering the other three games, although I know one wasn't made by Rocksteady, the previous games had a hiccup here and there, but I really haven't come across anything wrong with the PS4/Xbox One version, so it just kind of amazes me how one version is so completely broken.
Yeah, fair enough. Alright, let's move on to our final topic of discussion, which is kind of an interesting one for me, because basically this came out of E3. We didn't actually report it last week, because I only saw it this week. But it's kind of an interesting thing, because Nintendo are obviously a company which have espoused motion controls as being the way of the future, and, like, you know, how to include everyone and bring them together and have a family experience and all that kind of crap that they usually spew on and on and on and on and on, as we've known them doing for some very long time. But what is kind of interesting to me is that when people were asking Reggie Fils-Aimé, the president of Nintendo America, about a lot of the VR technology that was on display at E3 this year, you know, you had what was coming out of Microsoft, you had the Oculus Rift, you had Project Morpheus, you know, all these kind of you know, enhanced VR experiences or full VR experiences, and you would think that a company like Nintendo would be completely on board with that, but it's actually the opposite. They're not. And what he was quoted to say was that we believe that in order for this technology to move forward, you need to make it fun and you need to make it social. I haven't walked on the floor, so I can't say in terms of what is on the floor today, but at least based on what I've seen to date, it's not fun and it's not social, it's just technology. Does that smack to you of something which is a legitimate comment, or does that just sound like sour grapes that they didn't think of it first?
I think it's a bit of both, honestly. Nintendo has been well known that when Sony or Microsoft, more so they're concerned with Sony than Microsoft, but whenever their competition has this neat idea that actually works, they kind of get all fussy and say, oh, we don't think it's fun and we wouldn't pursue that and they're doing it wrong, we would have done it so much better. So Nintendo kind of has this history of being fussy over new ideas that they particularly don't think of. The other is that I can agree that maybe it's not the most social aspect in the world, but Nintendo has been also known to really not give a crap about single-player kind of games. I mean, they kind of are recently with Star Fox, because that's the one time they mentioned that they want to focus on a single-player game. But ultimately, it's just kind of a weird kind of... They're sort of right in that yeah, it's not very social because it's pretty much putting a helmet on your head and isolating yourself from the world. But at the same time, I think they're also being a bit fuzzy that they didn't think of it first.
Yeah, okay. Libby, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I agree with most of that. You know, they're right. It's not a social thing, and that's never been Nintendo's real target. But at the end of the day, if you look at people like Microsoft, like Sony, they're really going all in on this sort of thing. You've got Sony with their VR headset coming out at the end of the year. You've got the Oculus Rift that was bought out by Facebook. I mean, come on. You know, I don't know. In a way, I think he's right. Especially when you look at the specs for something like the Oculus Rift, and they're pretty beefy. I mean, you've got to have a fairly decent computer just to run it. And I've said this to you before, Red, about they're really targeting that niche high-end user with the Oculus Rift. Now, Sony with their hardware, honestly, I think when you look at the OR to what Sony's going to do, in the long term, Sony will win because they have a much broader market. They've got hardware that they know they can work with. They're not trying to work with this really high-end niche stuff like the Oculus is going to have to be able to, support what they're doing. But, I mean, yeah, a little bit of sour grapes of, hey, we invented motion controls, but, damn, we missed the VR market because, quite frankly, the Wii U would never, ever, ever support something like that. But it'll be interesting to see anyway where Nintendo go. Probably, I would wait until after Sony release their VR and see how their VR goes. I reckon if the VR goes well, and you've got the HoloLens for Microsoft, if those go well, I almost guarantee you will find that later down the road that Nintendo will change their story, as they have done before. They'll change their story and they'll go, you know what, this is the wave of the future. And all of a sudden you'll see it come out for Nintendo.
Well, they did invent the Virtual Boy, so technically they did think of it first. Naman, do you agree with what Malimber's saying there?
I think we may have lost him.
Did we lose Naman? Oh, that sucks. He's still in my chat. People were experiencing technical difficulties. Alright guys, Naman is back, but he lost half that conversation, so we're going to leave it there for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you very much for joining us. If you like the inclusion of Mr. Malimber, let us know. Leave a comment, and if you stroke his ego enough, he might come back another time. In the meantime, Mr. Nairman, where can people find you? You
can find me on my Twitter at NairmanBS, or you can find me on my YouTube channel of Brain Scratch Comms.
Excellente. Mr. Malimber, I know that people can find you on your Twitter at Malimber01 on Twitter. Is that the case?
Yep, they can do it on there. I don't look at it that often, but yeah, definitely shoot me a Twitter.
But you might start looking at it if people start sending you things.
It's quite possible, yes.
Well, there you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Let us know if you like the new format, and we will see you guys next week.
Catch you later, guys.